In this video, we're going to continue to unpack the contextual relevance of the seventh day of creation to the original audience. Remember, this seventh day meant something very distinct to them. We discussed this idea of relevance as we moved through. And last time we discussed this idea of the Shabbat briefly. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to dive deeper into how this Sabbath day was prefigured in the creation narrative. And then we're going to begin unpacking this idea. So, Mazel Tov. And let's begin to reconnect the seventh day of creation with Israelite religious customs. Let me begin from the outset again, once again, say that in this first narrative of the Bible, God is clearly the main character. He's the subject. And the main idea of the climax for the first narrative, as we have discussed, is the seventh day. The seventh day, as detailed later in the Torah, is a very key day for the nation of Israel. It's pointing to something. In fact, the nation of Israel begins celebrating the seventh day, known as Sabbath, religiously upon the Exodus. So this original audience coming into this text was already aware and practicing this ritual. As we begin, we need to do some groundwork and clarify what I mean by the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is observed throughout the year on the seventh day of the week, what would be Saturday. So once a week, according to the biblical tradition, it commemorates the original seventh day on which God rested after completing the creation. Interestingly, in the ancient Near East, the notion of the Sabbath as a holy day of rest was unique to ancient Israel. This type of practice, which sanctifies a particular day of the week for religious observance, was not the norm for the ancient Near East. This practice would therefore clearly stand out. And if it stood out to them, it should probably stand out to us. You see, in the book of Genesis, the Sabbath is, if you note, not practiced by the patriarchs. So far as you can see throughout Genesis, Enoch, nor Noah, nor Abraham, nor Lot ever practiced the Sabbath. As I said, the practice of resting on the Sabbath day is not put into practice until, the Exodus from Egypt. The protocols and procedures of observing the Sabbath day in the nation of Israel are established in the book of Exodus and Leviticus, in the Torah. But as I've noted, the groundwork for truly understanding the Sabbath day is laid in the creation narrative, or in a literary sense, the seventh day foreshadows the Sabbath. So what is the Sabbath that the seventh day is pointing to? The Sabbath day, as I stated, was a very key religious tradition for the nation of Israel, and it still is today for adherents to Judaism. Now, I want to return again to reflect on the Hebrew phrase we talked about before, Shabbat Shalom. In Judaism, Shabbat Shalom is a way of saying, may you be restored to wholeness on the blessed Sabbath. Many phrases in the saying have an impact, but the idea of being restored to wholeness, for example, bring up the idea that something is incomplete or even missing from the person who it's addressed to. So it's kind of a messed up greeting, isn't it? Shabbat Shalom. I hope you get restored someday. Anyway, I think that it's important as we move forward through our study that we understand this. The idea that someone is wishing you to be restored to wholeness implies that, something was lost. Now, as we look at Genesis 3 with the fall, we see much was lost. Thanks, Adam. That being said, in Judaism, the followers of the Torah were clearly looking for restoration. And that restoration would come on the blessed Sabbath, the fruitful Sabbath, the Sabbath of God. And by Sabbath of God, they don't just mean Saturday. They mean a greater Sabbath than the weekly Sabbath points to. A time when the people of God would be restored to wholeness. And we could press ideas about Jubilee, but we're not going to do that here right now. Now, we as disciples and followers of Christ should understand that this restoration in wholeness that they were looking for, that Shabbat Shalom is asking for, is fulfilled through Christ. In short, we can only be complete and enter the seventh day rest in Christ, the one who fulfilled the Mosaic law, the one in who restoration and wholeness comes, the one, as we see in John, who was there at the beginning of creation, the only one who can complete you, the only one who can fashion you. Right now, as Christians, we need to see that the seventh day, like the number 7, is a day of wholeness and completeness. But due to the fall, due to sin, this completeness cannot be reached by man. At least it wasn't until Jesus of Nazareth. The point is the seventh day of Genesis, which, as we noted in the last video, has no end, is pointing not just to the weekly Sabbath practiced by the children of Israel, but to something greater, a greater Sabbath, a Sabbath which is entered by Jesus, a Sabbath in which he will rule and reign. We'll pick that up next time. Right now, think through the idea of the holy seventh day. Shabbat Shalom.